Hey there! Welcome to APVA's member-centered event. Hang out with us today as we chat with members of the community, addressing the challenges of the typical African creative.
Hi everyone, good evening. Welcome to another Hangout with APVA, APVA, that is the Association of African Podcasters and Voice Artists. It's my pleasure to be your host. I go by the name Tolulope Kolade, popularly known as T Code. I'm a voiceover artist, a podcaster, and I'm the creative partner at APVA. And it's my pleasure to host tonight's event. Yes, it's 7 p.m. and I can see a couple of people are here already. I see Jennifer Canary, our esteemed guest, who would be joined alongside other guests. And I can see one of our listener, Temi Tokpe. I believe that's your full name. Anyways, thank you so much for being here on time. And I expect that people will be joining us in a couple of minutes. And we have also one of our guests here, Olalikon Ahmed. I'll be doing the proper introductions in a couple of minutes. I'm hoping that we can get the room filled with more listeners and guests as we continue to wait for them. Our third guest is here already as well, Omolere Bisola. Thank you for joining. Like I said, I'll be doing the proper introductions in a couple of minutes. For now, I'd like us to just wait for about 2 minutes or so to see if we can get the room populated a bit more, and then we can have this important conversation about the business of voice. Yes, or should I say the business of voiceovers, and particularly we'll be looking at navigating contracts, rates, and client relationships. So it promises to be a very great conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, just hang on for about 2 minutes more, and let's have a few more people join, and then we can commence this month's edition of Hangout with APVA. I will be back shortly, so don't go anywhere. In the meantime, our guests can request the mic so that we can make you speakers, and then we can get into the conversation of this evening. Okay, we're getting more people join. I just want to tell our guests to please accept the mic. You've been sent a request from the host APVA, so kindly accept the mic so that we can have a great conversation with you. All right, people. Good evening once again, and it's time for us to start the conversation. Okay, so it's Hangout with APVA, and we're talking about the business of voice, navigating contracts, rate, and client relationship. I want to welcome you all to this conversation. For those who are new to Hangout with APVA, Hangout with APVA, it's a place where we come together monthly to talk about voiceover related matters. Last month, I remember we were talking with Sean Showboard, the founder of Voiceover Academy, and we had an interesting conversation about script repository as we launched our script repositories. But this month, we've decided to look keenly into a matter that a lot of us struggle with. I mean, voiceover artists in Africa, and it's important for us to keep talking about these things because unfortunately, but that's the reality. The African voiceover terrain has a lot of work to do, and that's why we have selected these esteemed guests to talk about it because they have experience in the voiceover industry. So we have three voiceover artists, and one of them happens to be a lawyer, and another one happens to be the founder of a, a voiceover body in Africa. So let me go into introducing our guest. The first person I'll be introducing is a broadcast professional and a premium voiceover artist, a content creator. He has over a decade of experience in the voiceover industry, about maybe 2 decades, if I'm not mistaken. He's one of the very respected radio personalities in Nigeria, and he has been doing voiceovers for some of the biggest brands you can mention, both home and abroad. He's a member of the Association of Voiceover Artists Nigeria. I'm talking about no other person than Olalikon Ahmed. Olaliko, it's a pleasure to have you on this panel this evening. I think I'm more comfortable calling you Ahmed. Can you please unmute your mic and let's hear you? Hi, Ahmed.
Hi, Tico. Hi, everyone. I understand.
It's
Ahmed is more of my official name. A lot of people don't know Ahmed is my surname. My name is
interesting.
Olamide actually. Yeah, Ahmed is the surname, but working over time, Ahmed just got stuck there. So everywhere it's Ahmed. But when you come home, it's Leko more often. So I'm glad to be
Mm.
here. Happy to be here.
Nice to have you here. And I'm going to say something that I know you don't really, you don't enjoy when I put it that way. But, ladies and gentlemen, when you are seeing Ahmed, you just know that you have Avwa represented. Yes. It's a play. You're a member of Avwa, and you're a strong member. I can say you're even an executive, even though you don't want to agree sometimes. Thank you for being a part of this. And the next person I want to introduce is another voiceover artist from Nigeria before I head on to Kenya. She's not just a voiceover artist, but she's also a legal practitioner. Precisely, she's into contract and IP law, that's intellectual property law. I've known her for a while now, and she's been remarkably well in both fields. In voiceovers, you would hear her voice on international projects. She's also an author, by the way, and she's a tutor in Yoruba. So I'm talking about no other person than the beautiful Omolere Bisola. Bisola, it's a pleasure to have you this evening.
Hello, good evening. Really happy to be here. Really happy to be here with wonderful people. And hello, Lekon and everybody listening. Let me say Happy World Intellectual Property Day. Yes, I think
Yay! Thank you.
every voice actor qualifies as a creative. So I guess I'll start from there. So it's great to be
It's great to have you two here,
tracked.
Bisola.
And all right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. And my third guest, or our third guest for tonight, is what's the word to describe Jennifer now? I would say she's an Amazon. She's a professional voiceover talent, an executive voice coach, and the founder of the Voice Actors League of Kenya. She's been doing voiceovers for over 20 years. She's done voiceovers for many genres, many clients, big global clients, and she's pushing strong in the African continent, pushing the voice of our gospel strong. I'm talking about no other person than Jennifer Canary. Hello, Jennifer. Good evening.
Good evening, Tico. What an
It's
introduction. Always you. Thank you. Come back, please.
Thank you,
But I,
Jennifer.
yeah, it's great to be here. It's great to be amongst such an amazing group of speakers to be talking about this topic that is so important for us as African voice talent. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jennifer, also for showing up. Jennifer, she's one of those that keep inspiring people like me to continue talking about voiceovers because I look at somebody in our generation still talking about voiceovers. What excuse do we have as youngins not to, push the gospel of voiceovers? So, um, shout out to Jennifer Canary on that one. All right, guys. So welcome, and also I want to welcome everybody that has been here. You're the reason why we're doing this, and we appreciate your presence so much. Today we're talking about the business of voiceover, navigating contract rates and client relationship. Now, it is really, really important for us to understand these things because as the voiceover industry keeps evolving, We are interacting with clients, and there are new developments. Like sometimes we have changes in rates, and sometimes we even have new types of jobs that require special kind of contracts. Not even talking, I mean, AI is one of the things, but even the basic contracts. The question is, do we even understand how our contract, or what the contracts speak, how the contract should be, formed, what are the terms that the contract should have, and also looking at how we relate with our clients. These are things that we need to discuss in today's conversation. Also, towards the end of the conversation, I'll be allowing us to ask questions. So while they're speaking, you can note things down and ask questions that you feel that you feel is necessary to get answers to. All right, so let's start with the importance of contracts, and I'll be engaging Bisola in this question. You know, a lot of voiceover artists, to my knowledge, still don't operate using contracts, and that is why we get cheated a lot of times. Now, there's also that debate about, should it be coming from the client, should it be coming from the voiceover artist, and what are the terms that they should agree on. But before we even go into all of that, as a lawyer and also a voiceover artist, Bisola, can you talk to us about the importance of contracts, and how they can help us in negotiating favorable terms between both parties?
All right. Thank you, T Code, for that question. So, when it comes to contracts and voiceovers, I would say that it's all about having an understanding, and it's really all about an understanding of what the client wants, what you are willing to give, and there's different angles to this. You see, dependent, most voiceover artists or actors that I know are usually contracted, so it's not like there's an employment situation going on there. And so that it matters when there's a contract, because ideally the creator of a work, right, has ownership of that work, has the authorship of the work. And what does this mean? Now, when we're give this brings us to the realm of intellectual property. Intellectual property is owned by someone. Now, there, like I said, there are different sides to this. So when a client gives you a script, you're not their employee. They are engaging you to do the project for them. If there is no contract, the default state of things would be that the author of a work owns the work. And it's interesting because the author of a work now, when it comes to sound recording, is the person who produced the recording, right? So if we had to look at it from a literal perspective, from the literal standpoint, the author with respect to literal pieces, let's say the words that are written down, would be the author of that work. But with respect to something like sound recordings, which I believe affects voiceover actors, actresses, however we like to be called, would be that the owner of the intellectual property in that sound recording, notwithstanding or in spite of the fact that the script did not originate from you. Now we're dealing with the sound recording as a property, right? So the default state would be that it resides with the creator of the work. And I would like to put a disclaimer to this because I believe that the laws are different, since we also have people from other countries that are probably listening. I'm speaking with respect to the Nigerian jurisprudence. Okay. Now, when a contract is in place, then that changes the narrative of things. That means that what then applies is not the law per se, because the law allows you to, the law is there as, by default. So if there are no special agreements, then the law, people can alter the default state of the law. And I say this, I want in respect to contracts now, by having mutually conclusions with respect to a project. And contract serves to protect both parties, but mostly clients would like to bring up contracts to transfer that ownership of the sound recording because they want to have it, which is not a bad thing at all, especially, and this is also so, Tico, let me know when I need to round this off. I could go on
Okay,
and on.
okay, okay.
Okay, okay. So to just wrap it up a bit, I would just say that when a contract is in place, you just want to understand the terms of the contract and understand that what a contract will time is really to make it a work for hire relationship, which means that, I mean, amongst other things that would be in the contract, which means that the ownership of the gives to the creator of a work will then vest in the company that has hired you to do a voice recording for them. Yes, so let me just stop at this point. I'm sure that other questions, well, there's so many things I want to say about this, but I'm sure that as we go on in this section, we will talk about that.
All right. Thank you so much, Bisola, for giving us a background to the importance of contracts when dealing with uh, clients. As you have said, that most times the clients are the ones that bring the contract. However, whichever way it comes, the contracts play a crucial role to understand what both parties are agreeing on, and that would lead us to our
Absolutely.
next. Yeah, and that would lead us to the next part of this conversation, which is the rates and client relationship. Obviously, the reason why we have contracts is because we're trying to agree on certain things like the rate. We're trying to agree on certain things like the deliverables. And this also affects the relationship we have with our clients. So I would pose this question to Lekon before, or Ahmed, before I come to Jennifer. I want to understand the relationship, the ideal relationship between a talent and the client when it comes to a job. And when I say relationship, I don't mean informal relationship. I'm talking about what's the ideal communication supposed to be like? From what stage is is the conversation supposed to move from we're talking about just, hey, we want you to do a job for us, to these are the rates, to this is when we involve contracts and then we get the job done. So with your experience, Ahmed, how do you think that process is supposed to go, like go ideally?
All right, interesting T code. How much time do I have for this? Can you hear me? Too?
Yeah, what did you say?
How much time? How much time do I have for
You
this?
have about, say, 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay, okay. So then just keep talking and talking and okay, okay, nice. So I'll look at it from two perspectives. Number one, from what happens on a daily basis in the voiceover space in Nigeria. Then number two, what some voiceover talents have managed to craft as a norm for themselves, maybe as a result of interactions with clients over time. So what happens in in reality, what happens in the voiceover space is the relationship is like the client reaches out to you. I want to get a job done. This is what is involved. That is what is involved. And a lot of times, if there are clients you've had interactions with in the past, it's just like, okay, just send it to me. So that's what happens to a number of voiceover talents. That's the way the relationship works. The client reaches out, usually through intermediaries. These days, it's hard to just get the contact of the clients directly, particularly if you're working with those bigger brands. So the agency or whoever is in the middle reaches out to you as a voice talent. I want this job done. And you're like, okay, what is it like? You just talk about it and the job is done and you send it. That is what happens a number of times. But the ideal thing, particularly when you have the opportunity to work directly with clients, with brands, I mean, the big brands particularly, it's ideal to have every form of communication between you and the brand properly documented. That's your correspondence from the get-go must be in a mail. I mean, that's the major way to make it formal, to keep that relationship as formal as possible. So the moment the client reaches out and says, I want so and so, maybe via phone or WhatsApp message, it's ideal to channel that client, back to the original official route. Since we're talking about contracts now, we can't be having contracts via calls, text messages, and all that. So that's what the ideal should be. Do a mail stating terms of the contract, channels it will run on, money involved, and all that and all that. So basically, I think that's the kind of relationship it should be. Send a mail to me to keep everything organized from the beginning to the delivery of the final project. That's the way it should be.
Hmm. Thank you very much, Ahmed. So it is like you've said in summary. Usually, we have cases where people just send jobs to voiceover artists, and maybe based on previous relationship, they just get it done. But ideally, we should involve a contract and have things done properly, mostly via email, so that there is documentation. All right, now let me move to Jennifer Canary, who has, I mean, she's arguably the oldest of us here with the most years of experience. So I'm sure that Jennifer has interacted with numerous contracts in her years of work. So from your perspective, Jennifer, what are the things that you believe that should be in a proper contract, and also how should the contract be um agreed upon, in the sense that there are times that you have contracts that was initially established by the client. What are the things that, when a voiceover artist looks at a contract, you can tell that this contract is incomplete and might not favor me, or this contract is good enough? So tell us about contracts from your perspective. Hi, Jennifer, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear
All
you.
right. All right.
Can you hear me
Yes.
now? Yes,
Yes, we can.
my computer is on delay. I hope it's not delaying
No,
now.
no, no. Please go on. We can hear
So
you.
yeah, okay, good, good, good. So having been in the industry for the number of years that I have, like you said, for over 20 years, I've come to see that it's important to, like you alluded to earlier, to understand how all these things go together: the rates, the contracts, and even where we're going to the client relationship. Because we need the clients, but we also need to be protected vis-a-vis our, you could say, intellectual property, like Abby explained. And so there's a place where, which is why I think this conversation is happening, that voiceover actors have to begin to wear that business hat very deliberately, because we didn't do it in the beginning when we were starting in the 2000s. And we pretty much signed whatever was given to us. I'll say that in those years, there was at least on a local level, the clients were more scrupulous, you could say. Things have changed. And the digital explosion is one of the things that caused clients to begin to put things in their contracts that didn't seem to make sense anymore. For example, where a contract, like you asked, should clearly state all the parties involved, where it's you and your client, and if there are any middlemen, for example, if you're working with an agent or what are they called, an in-between house, a production house, agency, all those players have to be written, and I'll explain why. Because sometimes individuals or certain parties stop functioning. And there is an unspoken protocol in the industry where the contract kind of describes who communicates with the client. So whoever you're communicating with, because Ahmed Lekan, not sure, I like Lekan, mentioned quite a bit about how we often don't communicate directly with the big boys. We communicate with an agency. Still, the contract must show the big boy's name, the agency's name, production house if there is, even a casting agent, and all the details, especially alluding to payment, especially where there's a casting agent involved. And then the rate or the amount that has been agreed upon, the usage area, and the period of time for which this production is going to air. And the business hat comes on, where Abby was talking about, where you do own the right to your voice. And this is very much in a commercial production conversation, which is one of the things we do need to be aware of, that there are almost like two camps of work that come to us. There's the commercial work, the work that is earning money for your client, that is being aired on a broadcast channel, TV or radio, and is likely to be paying more to you than, say, a corporate client who has $100, $200, sometimes $50 jobs for you. And their client base or the audience, the usage area is very small, is very limited to their own circles. And then the contract, if any, changes. But talking largely about the commercial clients, where you want to, the reason why you need all the players mentioned is because, and as has happened to me, a production house stops functioning and we realize that the usage area has gone beyond what was on the contract, and we need to communicate with someone to pay the extra. And we've had to contact the client directly. And so the other thing that Lekan mentioned is you must have everything, and the date, the period of time, a filing system, an online system, an agreement system on email, to be able to show client who doesn't know you from Adam that it was your voice that put that production on air, and that you're now coming to ask for a remuneration for having gone beyond the contract area. And usually they have no problem with that. They'll put you in touch with their new agency or new production house, and then go from there. And you've actually gained a new client in that production house. The thing that caused, and now I know I'm into overtime, the thing that caused commercial contracts to go into a crazy area is where they began to talk about usage in perpetuity in all areas for all time, language like that. And what was happening is, or what happened when the digital age happened, they could no longer keep their side where they said we will use it only on TV and radio, because the client would have it or house it on their website. And often it would be now viral. And so we, the voice artists, were coming back to say, yo, give us our money times 5, or whatever the global rate was in your region. And so because they hadn't budgeted for that themselves to their client in the beginning, or the client at all, they had to, or they chose to put that language into their contracts. And so it's very, very important to read your contracts and to sign away certain things like that. But what we do in Kenya is, because we recognize that the clients really cannot control the production once it's out, is we offer them usage online, never in perpetuity, 2 years, 3 years max. And then we, for 150%, for example. So the fee they offered plus 50% or 75%, depending on the profile, high profile and not of the client, so that you maintain a client and you're also not taken advantage of. So just quickly about the rates for non-commercial work, non-broadcast work, a lot of which happens online. The contracts are often unspoken, but again, it's important to have that information in your communication. And of course, once you say, I agree, it's like you've signed on to taking whatever rate they've offered you. But it's okay to gain a client that is giving you regular work for $100 for their small client base, in my opinion, and then have a kind of undergirding agreement about how, and regular fee, payment terms, when they will pay, and always ask for a copy of that production to boost your own profile. Pay-to-play sites, which are quite big for us in Volk, or we encourage people to join the pay-to-play sites that are international voiceover platforms that more and more are beginning to look for us African voice actors. They hold a lot of the money conversation, but they also protect you if you keep the conversation on the platform. That doesn't mean you don't have to be careful with your client once you begin direct communication about all those areas. But there's an extra protection that your pay-to-play platform like Voice123 or Voices.com or Voquent and pay-to-play sites of the kind offer you. So it's a huge conversation. I hope that's been helpful.
Absolutely, Jennifer. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, especially coming from the Kenyan region and how voiceover has been treated. Something I've learned, that I think is very wise, that you guys have implemented, is how you allow for the client usage for 2-3 years, after which it can be renewed. I think that's a very, very smart idea because, in perpetuity can be, at the end of the day, it just looks like, come on, how much can they pay you forever to use your voice? So
They
they
can't.
can't actually.
Let me just say, we used
Go on.
to say in perpetuity is fine, and then we'd slap the amount 10 million, something really crazy.
Yeah.
And then they'd say, okay, wait, what's this?
Yeah, that's it. So charging them 150% seems like a very smart thing to do for a 2-year usage or 3. Wow, that's beautiful. All right, let me come back to Bisola because I know Bisola has a lot to talk about with IP and contracts. But I want you to talk about how we can resolve disagreements and conflicts legally, because this is your field. Plus, you can also add some other things that you want to share for the sake of context and clarity. So perhaps you can start with those and then you tell us about how we can handle disagreements and conflicts with clients over contract terms. And if there are other strategies that we can use to resolve them amicably, you can also share with us. So over to you, Bisola.
Okay. With respect to resolving conflict about contract, I would say it's all about having a conversation, having an understanding. So, let's say a client sends, they've been time in the past where, let me use a personal story, where I've been given a contract that I didn't quite like what it was. Right. So I've had to like approach the client. Of course, by approach, I don't mean in person. It's mostly online and all of that. I've had to like approach them to talk about some clauses that I wasn't comfortable with. And I think they would understand. So the thing is, I think when you're given a contract, it's negotiable. I think it's all about negotiation, right? It's negotiable. It's about, okay, this is what we want, or you can say, oh, okay, how about this instead, right? So it's about looking at it from the standpoint of, to start with, your client is not your client, is your client, right? They want a service, and so it's not anything confrontational in any way. It's really just about an understanding and everybody trying to get what they want. And so I think that approaching from that standpoint of, I want to provide value to this person, that kind of just makes it non-confrontational, and then you can really propose what you have, which I think that uh, most persons would not want to do. And the subject of contract is, when people receive them, they just think that they have no choice with that. And I have to also tell you that sometimes in reality, really, especially when you're dealing with some kind of clients, they don't leave up a space to negotiate. And because to be fair, to be frank rather, it's like, okay, this is what we want. Like, when she talked about the in perpetuity thing, so I think, like Jennifer said, you could really propose a different fee. You want it in perpetuity, I'll give you in perpetuity at this price. So it's just that okay, I'm going to move from here to here, you meet me in the middle, and that kind of thing. So conflict resolution, I wouldn't really say, I wouldn't I'm treating this question from the lens of negotiating a contract more than a conflict. Which, and do let me know if the question you meant is like an actual conflict. Actually, in the course of my work, I've never had that. By actual conflict here, I mean that, okay, maybe the work is already done and there's actually a conflict. But I like to think that what you mean is with respect to negotiating the contract, maybe because there are terms that conflict with what you wanted to offer. So I think for me, it's always communication, 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 and that we need to understand that most of the time clients are open to these negotiations. And with the story I was given earlier, so when I did point out some concerns that I have, and of course they understood. So and everything was sorted. So to just let us know that we can do that. And let me put a disclaimer here also. To be frank with you, there are times that you will probably have to let go of certain jobs. So again, and I think it's still always up to you, right? I was speaking to a dear friend of mine that I consider a brand strategist about how do I not lose clients? I want to keep them, but those kind of things. And he was saying to me, which is something that I'm working with right now, you can't have it all, right? So while you want to resolve conflict as calmly as possible, as non-confrontational as possible, you have to understand, frankly speaking, there are people who would say it's a when you're presented with a take it or leave it. And so what do? You have to know that, yes, you may have to lose some things if you're not willing to give it. And then it's completely up to you. Do you want to do that? But I will always say that a voice actor always has that choice, really. So I would just say you don't have to feel compelled if you don't want to give what they are asking. You don't have to feel any form of pressure doing that. But then just having an open mind and going with the mindset of, I'm trying to provide value to you and protect myself at the same time. We are not, it's not our a win-lose situation here. It's approaching a contract as though it's everybody can have a win-win, and
Okay.
that's what happened most of the time, really.
Mm.
The
Oh,
win-win.
all right. Thank you very much, Bisola, for that explanation. And I understand that everything you've said is in context of if both parties are still negotiating. So we are assuming that nothing has
Yeah.
gone wrong yet. I will come back to you
Mhm.
to talk about what if something actually goes wrong, like you weren't paid for the
Absolutely.
service, or a breach of contract. So we'll get back to that. So let's
Mhm.
talk about
Okay.
negotiation for now. And I'm taking the conversation over to Olalekan, who I know has had to negotiate a lot of time with clients. Time around, talk about it in respect to also rates. Okay, so Lekon, when you're dealing with a client, how do you negotiate these things, your rates? And I want you to talk to us as though we don't understand how to price or how to charge or how to apply the rate cards at our disposal. I mean, we are fortunate to have AVOA create a new rate card this year. So tell us, what are the things that we need to table to our clients? Because unfortunately, some clients don't know better as well. We also have agencies who they can be rather greedy sometimes, and they would intentionally ignore certain things that should be brought to light ordinarily. So, as though we are just new into this business, how should we charge? How should we negotiate? And then we can talk about what if there's a breach in contract.
Okay, so negotiation is one very important because we're talking about the business of voiceovers. So first things first, there is, you mentioned the rate card, yes, which is a major standard to measure what the value is. That's the general market value for the industry. For instance, APVA just came out with a rate, which is the rates Nigeria is trying to work with for now. So that's like a standard rate. I think the rate for radio is 150,000 naira in Nigeria. That's a standard. So if somebody is coming to you, a client wants to do a job, and the client is saying, this is what I have to do, this is what I have to do. I need to do a radio, I need to do a TV or an audiobook or something. I think the first point that every voice talent should reference is the rate card, because that's like, it gives you a general view of the rates available, the rates that voiceover talents charge for different things. So apart from knowing that, that's the basic. Every voiceover talent should know what the standard rate is. What does it cost to do a 30 seconds commercial? What does it cost to do a 1 minute commercial on radio or TV, on the internet? That information should be handy. Every voiceover talent should have that information handy. But away from the rate card, there's something else I think talents also need to pay attention to, which is value. Every voice of a talent must understand the value he is bringing, the value she is bringing to the table. Because when you understand the value, you can tell if you should pay, if clients should pay you beyond what's obtainable in the market, or if you should go down, take some steps down below the actual rates that voice talents take normally. For instance, I was having a conversation with yeah, it was Eric. I was having a conversation with voice talent also in Nigeria, correct guy, and we were talking about the new rate card in Nigeria, and I shared a client a client wanted to do a job around that time, and I'd given the client a bill. Before that job, before this particular job the client wanted to do, we did a job like 3 months back before the rate card came out. And the rate I collected for that job was more than like twice the current rates for this new rate card. And when I got the new rate card, and it was like, the rate is this. I saw here, I spoke with some other talents and this. So I sent him the new rate card immediately without even thoroughly going through the rate card. So it was later I looked at the card and I was like, the rate on this card, what I charged this guy for a project 3 months ago is more than this rate. How will I do this? So I had a conversation with Eric and we're like, yes, we're able to, we had a smooth conversation and we're able to reach an agreement that yes, sometimes you're bringing value that is more than, that you think is more than what is obtainable in the market generally. There's no crime in going beyond that. So that's why I raised the point of know your value as a voice talent. What value are you bringing in? So if, for instance, the rate is 100,000 naira for radio commercials, I can say, I mean, I've done this for a long time, and I know that my voice can sell this product to a large extent, to this level and that level. And instead of doing 100,000 naira, I'll do 150,000 naira. If truly you know you're worth that, you can have the negotiation on 150,000 naira. And sometimes voice talents make that mistake of saying, for some, say a voice talent who just started a business 2 years ago, or say last year, and the talent is still trying. You've not done any major job, you've not done any big thing. What you still have is your demo, and you're having a conversation with a telco, for instance, you get the opportunity to have a conversation with an agency or maybe a telco. They want you to get a job done. You're insisting on, no, you're going to pay me 150,000 naira for radio because this is the normal rate. Yes, in as much as there is a normal market value for voice talents, I also believe, I strongly believe the value you bring into the business, the value you bring into what you're doing, what you're giving, can also determine your rates. It could be lower, it could be higher. So voice talents should always have that in mind. There's a standard rate, but you can go higher or lower. So know your value at every single point in time. Know your strength. Know how much you've built your brand. So that can also inform your negotiation when having interactions with clients. I hope that answers that.
Yes, it very much does. Thank you very much, Lekon. You also brought in perspective into this because some people are, I mean, it also depends on value. For someone like you who've been doing this for a very long time, you can easily charge way above what the rate card says because you've got the bragging right. And some people don't bring that much value. So, yes, it could be above or below, but understanding your value points helps you understand how to negotiate with the clients. Thank you so much. You've also mentioned other things. And this conversation has been all round talking about rates, contracts, and the likes. Now, I would want us to take one or two questions if we would have any. But like I said, I also want us to discuss how to resolve conflict in the voiceover business. So let me give that question first of all to Jennifer so she can answer it from many years of experience as a voiceover artist, and then we can talk to Bisola about it to respond from the aspect of a legal practitioner. Jennifer, how do you think we can resolve conflicts with clients?
Avoid it at all costs. But
Yeah.
but yeah, if you go into the job with your mind awake, your mind open to because what are the possible conflict areas? It's maybe on before the job. If it's part of the contract, you would speak about that. So it's not really it would be resolved with, yes, we can carry on, or you meet in the middle, like Bisola said, Abby said. But if you went into a job and you hadn't understood, or you had misunderstood, sometimes language can get in the way, then finding the best, trying. You have to try and ask for what you feel was taken away from you, and be willing to, chalk it up to experience if you don't get it. And I'm one for don't, burn that bridge with that client unless they're a very, very difficult client to work with. Just know how to work with them in the future. Have everything ahead of time so that you make sure that conflict area is taken care of. So I think if you go in prepared, you'll be fine. I know one area where I didn't understand, it was a dubbing job, and I don't do a lot of dubbing. So I put my bid in and they loved my voice, and I needed to do things according to a time code. And anything I had done before that was what my clients had called soft timed. So it was a soft timing to the, Swahili to English was what I was doing. And the client was like, "What are you doing? This is not what I asked for." So I said, "What do you mean? This is what I please, the language, of course, is very important, to be very polite. And when I finally understood that what he wanted for the very small fee that he had offered was not something I could do, or I was willing to do because of the time, I gracefully bowed out of it, apologized that I had not understood based on my past experience with similar projects, found someone who did have that experience with the time coding that they needed and connected them. Saving face and also being that client or voiceover actor that finds solutions as well.
Hmm.
Yeah. So the other one, there's a client I had who wanted me to do less than I thought I needed to do. She wanted a very low quality job, and I couldn't understand that anyone would ask for that. And she was getting upset, and it was messing with my statistics. And I was like, girl, you're not going to do that. So I got really polite, and I said, okay, what is it you want? And I reduced my standards, gave her what she wanted, and she was like, yay, you can do this. It was a very, I don't know, pride moment, but I was glad to find a way out of, she then gave me a raring review, which sorted my stats on that particular platform. Because you never want bad reviews. They can totally destroy your voiceover, profile. So if anything, avoid the conflict, find a solution, and be willing to chalk it up, take it and chalk it up as an experience, learning experience.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer. So much wealth of experience from your end. And I like how you have been able to approach these things amicably. I think the best advice I got so far is instead of getting into conflict and trying to resolve them, avoid them absolutely. Uh, but in the case that we then get into a conflict, which is probably when, sometimes it's not from our end, it's maybe the client's not, meeting up to their own side of the bargain or the contract. How do we treat this? And that is where we would have Bisola, who is our contract and IP expert, respond to this question. So, Bisola, how should we do it?
Yes, yes. First, let me say I would still start from where she stopped, really, because even when it gets to the litigation point, which is like the extreme end, I'm actually answering backwards. I'll still come to the front. Don't worry, because when it gets to the litigation point, it's never a win-win. So the first thing I want us to have that at the back of our mind that avoid it at all costs should be the mantra. But then there are times when it's unavoidable, to be honest, even though I haven't had that experience, right? Now, for example, if there is a contract, the way to approach it depends on the situation at hand. If there's a contract at hand, most of the time, the contract, if properly the process for resolving conflict, and most of the time, even the client would propose in the contract. So litigation is really the last thing on anybody's mind, whether the client themselves. Right. So if there's a contract, the terms of the contract, because the contract is a binding document, right? So you have an alternative dispute resolution. We're going to do final. So then that would control how the conflict will be resolved on mechanism that is being utilized. It's really going to be by independent bodies, going to be fair, and the will be looked at. And if there is no contract, then the talent can try to resolve the issue however they please. By that I mean, of course, in accordance with the law, right? So they could still start, and that's what I still recommend in any case, even if there's no contract to that effect, to try an alternative dispute resolution or mechanism, either negotiation, liaising with the client to try to resolve, because I everything can really be resolved if the parties are reasonable. So that is another way to go about it. And well, when they're not coming to an agreement, in that case, maybe a litigation is unavoidable. And let me give an instance of where this can occur, just so we have a better understanding of that situation. Say, for example, a voice actor was are invited for a project which she did, and the use did not include maybe using her voice for AI or text to speech, or and And that happens. I think there was a case like that. There was a case like that, a recent case uh, in that
Mm,
light. And that, especially if now the use of the work then contradicts your personality, in that case you can't let it go, because in that case it's not even really about the money. If it's about the money, really, depending on how you see money, you could let go, right? Well, it's still up to you. But in a case where it violates something that you hold there, say for example a Christian voice actor did a voiceover work and then it was manipulated and maybe used for a pornography site. That is, and you can't negotiate your way out of that, because you have a line that you cannot cross. So in that case, you would then probably have no choice than to litigate over the matter. And it's interesting that, or I really like that the law really protects creative in that instance, especially since it gives moral right in the author of a work, such that it cannot be taken away from them. So even when you sign out, again, I speak this carefully, even when you sign out, you give them the rights and all of that. There's a right that is inherent in you. For example, the right to preserve the integrity of the work, using the example I was citing earlier. So if I did a voice work, I don't expect it to be used for immoral purposes, for example, whatever you consider immoral to be. And if the company uses it for something like that, that can be a conflict. That is a conflict that negotiation might not fix, especially if the company.
okay. Seems like I can't hear. Bisola, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear
No.
you. I can hear
Okay.
you.
I lost you at some point, but I think
Oh, okay. I think the summary of what I was saying is, to resolve conflict, it's usually advised to have an alternative means of resolution, because, like Jennifer mentioned earlier, you want to preserve relationships as much as possible, and you don't even want conflict in the first place. But when it is unavoidable, especially where it affects the integrity of your work, then litigation might be the next course of action to assert such
mm,
rights.
all right. Thank you so much, Bisola. Wow, it's been 1 hour of talking about voiceovers in
Ooh.
the context of, you know, contracts, negotiations, rates, and all. And I want to appreciate our speakers, starting from the last speaker who just spoke, Omoleri Bisola, who is a contract and IP lawyer, and she's also a fantastic voiceover artist. Thank you so much for, helping us understand this better.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a
You're
pleasure.
welcome. I also want to appreciate Olalekan Ahmed, who is a broadcast journalist, a professional voiceover artist, a member of the Association of Voiceover Artists Nigeria, and is one of the very respected talents we have in this country. Thank you for being our guest today, Lekon.
Thank you, Chico, for having me. It's been great.
And thank you so much, Leko. And then to the Amazon in the building, our mama, all the way from Kenya. I'm talking about the founder of the Voice Actors League of Kenya, VALC, Jennifer Canary. Thank you so much for gracing this Hangouts, Jennifer.
It's been a pleasure, Tolu. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's already an hour. I would have loved us to take a question. I don't know if anybody has a question. Nobody here is a speaker aside the guests and myself. So if at all you have a question, if you could just type it in the comments in the next 30 seconds, that would be fine. And if not, we would call this a wrap. But while I wait, if there is any question whatsoever, I would encourage us to, if you're not a member of APVA, I want to assume everybody here is a member of APVA. But if you're not a member, I'd encourage you to check out what we're doing and also become a part of us. And you can check our website to find every information about what APVA is doing. The website is apva.africa. What we try to do is to curate and to make sure that there are enough resources for African podcasters and voice actors. and we have a lot of programs coming up for you. You should also know that the um, Voiceover and Podcast Awards, the APVA Awards, coming up in September. We are planning and preparing for the awards, so get ready to start nominating your faves, your favorite voiceover artists and podcasters. It's another year for us to do this, as we have always been doing, and we need your input. So I encourage you to go to our website as well and find out how you can be a part of the APVA Awards. So, on this note, I want to say thank you to everybody that has been a listener so far and a contributor, and also thanks to APVA, that's the Association of African Podcasters and Voice Artists, for making this possible. My name is Tolulope Kolade, aka T Code, a voiceover artist and podcaster. Well, seems like there's a question. Just before we go, but it's the question we get almost all the time. So I don't think that is going to take us a long time to act in how to start, or how do I start properly. All right, Cookie. I would always advise people go and take training in voiceovers, and just listen to this in 30 seconds. Three ways you can learn voiceovers, three ways you can start. Go for a training with a voiceover institution of learning. You have a couple of them here in Nigeria. Then you can also find a mentor to train you one on one. And thirdly, you can also use the free resources available to you. And I'll advise you to take the three, steps. Go for training with an institution, get a mentor, and find resources like podcasts. I have a podcast called the Everything Voiceovers Podcast, The African Perspective, where I interview voiceover artists across the continent and we talk about voiceover. So you can learn a lot from there. You can find books. Jennifer has a book that she has written. In fact, two books she has written about voiceovers, and that will be of tremendous help for you. You can find YouTube videos where people talk about voiceovers. You can attend conferences, like the voiceover conference happening in Nigeria is happening in June, and that is free of charge. So you can attend that virtually and also physically. So these are ways you can find resources for free. And I hope this answers your question. If you have more questions, you can send me a DM and I can take it further from there. All right. So guys, thank you so much for being a part of this. Next month, we'll have another edition of Hangout with APVA, and we'll let you all know what it will be about and who our guests will be on our platforms. It's been a great evening, and this is where we'll call it a wrap on this month's episode. You can follow each other and say your goodbyes. Thanks, guys, and we'll see some other time. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the episode. Become a member of APVA today. Visit apva.africa to learn more.